I'm Quinn, and I love Star Wars. How much introduction do you want? I was basically raised on Star Wars. I mean, like, me and my brother and my sister, like, grew up watching it. Our dad was really into it. So we watched it, like, I don't remember the first time seeing it because I saw it from a baby all the way up. So yeah, I have no living memory without Star Wars. All the way from like high school till now, I'm kind of known by my friends as somebody who likes Star Wars. I mean, that's just like something about me that comes up. I'd have people over all the time for like movie nights. I had a little like room separate from the house, so it was a great place for people to come and like drink and, you know, just be teenagers. And like we would have movie nights all the time, and usually people would just be like laughing and talking over it and drinking. We'd be watching some like stupid movie on VHS. But when it was a Star Wars movie night, it was usually because somebody was there who hadn't seen Star Wars, and I like wanted to show it to them. So I would be like, all right, everybody can come, but if you're coming, you're watching the fucking movie, and I'm serious about that. And people would kind of think that I was joking, and they'd like come, and they would like try to talk. I'd be like, get the fuck out. I'd like kick them out, and I was like super just like authoritarian about it. But like my friends that I showed Star Wars in that way, like, will still bring it up and be like, I'm so glad you fucking did that, because it's like I got to like really have like like a solid first experience. So people will often come to me for like suggestions on like what order to watch the movies and stuff like that if they're watching it for the first time, and I'm like, I'm gonna watch it with you, and I'll choose the order, and we'll like do it right, you know? It's getting increasingly weird though now that there's like the spin-off movies and stuff. So if you were gonna watch it chronologically, it'd be 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, Rogue One, 8, Solo, 9, and that's like, that doesn't really make any sense. So I guess now I would say 4, 5, 6, maybe Solo, Rogue One, since they narratively are in that order, and then 1, 2, 3, then 7, 8, 9. That's kind of like where I'm at right now. So I'm still pretty on the like, you know, order they came out train, but I think I am in a good position to give people, like, show this thing that I love to people in the way that it ought to be experienced. And I think that's been like a way for me to bond with people. Like, if I have like an acquaintance who's kind of like on the perimeter of my friend group, and I find out that they haven't seen Star Wars, I can be like, let me show you Star Wars. And that's like kind of generated friendships and stuff like that. It helps me relate not just with other Star Wars fans, but it also, in showing it to people and being like passionate about it when I do that, I think it helps form and strengthen friendships. It's a fun thing to do with people, so. I usually go for Star Wars games that have like more story, show you more of the world and stuff like that. Knights of the Old Republic is maybe my favorite game of all time, and I've replayed it many, many times, and I kind of come back to it all the time. It just got it's probably my favorite Star Wars narrative ever, I would say. Lately, probably my favorite Star Wars game is Star Wars Squadrons, a really great Star Wars dogfighting game with like awesome graphics and stuff. It's just like awesome. It's basically just like a dogfighting game, like Star Wars Air Force kind of thing. You're flying around in little fighters and shooting at each other, and it's kind of got like a bit of a flight simulator vibe to it. It's like cool physics and cool controls and stuff, so it feels very immersive. And yeah, that game, it's fun like playing these games and just thinking about like, imagine just giving this kid this game to my like, you know, 10-year-old self. Yeah, it tickles my fancy. Definitely, it makes me feel nostalgic for sure. It also just there's so many good associations that it's just like a very warm and fuzzy, comforting thing to be able to experience. Yeah, and like even whether it's like the games or the movies or the soundtrack, even if I'm just listening to that alone, or the show, it does just give me this like, it just feels very, I feel very at home doing Star Wars stuff. It's kind of weird because it's like, because it's just been this thing in the background that's been like important to me for my whole life, it does just have this like unique vibe that's kind of hard to describe, just because it's like, It's something that's characteristically Star Wars, feels deeply comfortable for me. So that's the best I can do at really describing the feeling. But it's funny because it's like not all Star Wars content does that for me. I sometimes joke like real Star Wars fans hate Star Wars because like half of the Star Wars content that exists I like hate. It's like, which is funny because it's like I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to describe. Star Wars for me isn't Star Wars content. It's like, it's this world that I know, right? And it might be for different people, like that world might contain different things. But I know what Star Wars is to me. And not all Star Wars content is a part of it for me, you know? The original trilogy definitely is. The prequel trilogy has slowly been like getting better for me just because I've seen how much worse Star Wars content can be in terms of being like not Star Wars, not having that kind of vibe. The more hardcore of a Star Wars fan you are, it's almost like the less Star Wars content you like, which is like a funny paradox, but it's like people get very particular about like what feels properly Star Wars. I'm like pretty accepting of most of it, but fuck the sequels. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at the moment. It's kind of funny because when I was asked to like do the interview, at first it seemed kind of like lame to talk about something like Star Wars because it's like this commercial franchise. It's like, you know, people that are really into Disney get like made fun of. It feels like a similar kind of thing because it's just this like product, you know? I mean, it's fundamentally like a fantasy film, right? I mean, it's like this big kind of like quasi-Shakespearean like space opera thing. And George Lucas like says that his goal was to kind of use these like Jungian archetypes and stuff and just like not tell an epic, but tell the epic, you know, like the epic that we're all familiar with. It's like Beowulf. It's like, you know, it's using these like very old tropes, and it's doing so intentionally, right? To like tell us this very human story that like is super relatable, you know, and that's part of probably why it like resonates and feels so epic and so familiar and relatable, you know? It's got, you know, the Wild West kind of spaghetti western vibes, which was like influenced by like old samurai flicks and stuff, which also like finds its way in. The Jedi Knights are basically samurai, right? So the sort of like collection of influences that makes the Star Wars aesthetic and makes the setting so like recognizable as Star Wars. I mean, it's just interesting that like all of this content has come out, whether it be like Legends or canon. There's all this content in the way of films and games and books and comic books. But if there's one thing that is going to be unique and special about it, it's the particular kind of like combination of things, stuff like taking stuff from like Eastern philosophy and like a particular group of films and like styles and aesthetics, and then just like smushing it together into this like cool kind of amalgamation of like cool influences. Having like Yoda and Obi-Wan talk about the Force was like a kind of watered down Eastern philosophy, this kind of like pseudo-Taoism, you know, was a kind of spiritual idea or philosophical idea that I had never been exposed to prior, right? So like when I was maybe 12 or so, my dad gave me a copy of the Tao Te Ching, and the way he kind of pitched it was like, it's kind of like the Jedi religion, right? So it was like, I think that my entry into studying philosophy was sort of painted with like, the Jedi are these like philosopher warriors, right? And like the kind of esoteric wisdom that they had, I always thought was really fascinating. A lot of this doesn't come out very obviously in the movies, but in the expanded universe, the Jedi Order has a very fleshed out sort of worldview and philosophy and religion, really, and so do the Sith. And I remember like learning about both of those and like identifying more with the Jedi, but being like, the Sith ideas are like coherent, where there's this hyper individualist philosophy that's like rejecting any kind of dogma that like limits your power and your freedom, and that's like the Sith, right? And then there's like this highly regimented, hierarchical, structured, and like disciplined kind of Confucian Taoist kind of thing that's like completely opposed to it. It's not just they're evil. Like, we love evil. right? It's actually kind of like this weird like Nietzschean kind of like accepting the will to power kind of thing. And it like I remember when I was like in my young teens, like me and my brother would be at the bookstore and like go pick up like Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible and be like, this is like Sith shit. Like this is all like, this is the Sith, you know? And then like later on, like reading Beyond Good and Evil and being like, this is some Sith shit. Like I could see like Darth Bane saying this shit, you know? Although it is still pretty black and white, it's a little less black and white with the whole good and evil thing. Like Darth Vader used to be Anakin Skywalker, right? It's like evil people are not necessarily born evil, right? They like get corrupted by these things that are inside all of us, like by the selfish attachments and things like that. And I think growing up and being like really skeptical of the religion I was raised in, like grew up in like a Protestant household, broadly speaking, like went to church as a kid, wasn't into it. Me and my brother like had like a kind of like edgelord atheist childhood and adolescence. Part of the thing that was unattractive about Christianity, for example, was seeing things in these big black and white dichotomies, you know? And I think that being able to look at, you know, something like the Force, which has a light side, but it also has a dark side, and it's like everything is on a spectrum and there's balance, right? I think that was something that just seemed so much more attractive to me as a kid than like the religion I was brought up in. Being aware of things like if you get overly attached, like selfishly attached, like bad things can happen, right? Like if you let emotions just like turn you into a monster, you know, you can do really evil things. And like the evil in the world is often caused by these kinds of things that are inside of all of us that we need to keep in check, you know? So I think that there was a sort of moral education from Star Wars 2 that I think shaped me pretty significantly, and that I still appreciate today, I think. I don't know how much of it is correlation and how much of it is causation, because it's like the rebels are the good guys. The rebels support like democracy and all these things, right? And it's like our culture supports the same things, kind of. So it might be that Star Wars has those values given to it by the culture, and I also have them given it by the culture. It might not be like Star Wars to me. I grew up loving like the Rebel Alliance. That was like the faction I was into as a kid, and so was my brother. And I honestly think that probably gave me a taste for thinking like political dissent was cool, you know, and like having a kind of anti-authoritarian stripe growing up, and like just in general seeing a kind of romance in like raging against a totalitarian system or a system that was unjust or something like that. So yeah, Rebel Alliance. Yeah. I mean, I imagine kind of doing a lot more of what I've always been doing, you know, just enjoying the movies, showing the movies to people, you know, enjoying the new content that comes out and all that. And now there's just like new content coming out constantly. So I'm sure that there's gonna be even more splinters in like the fandom about like what new Star Wars content is acceptable and what isn't. And that'll be interesting to like participate in that discourse, you know? So in the future, it's like, where do I put these like 6 spin-off movies into like these like 3 trilogies, like in what order? It's gonna get even like more, there's gonna be so many silly, complicated, like suggested orderings for watching the movies and stuff. Star Wars fans have a lot on the horizon, and yeah, I'll definitely be right in the thick of all that, so. Day that brings the promise that one day we'll be free to live, to laugh, to dream, to grow. There needs to be an edition made of A New Hope where Han shoots first after Greedo sang McClunky. So Greedo doesn't shoot, but they're sitting there and Greedo just says McClunky, doesn't shoot, and Han toasts him. That would be the perfect synthesis of the current editions.
Yeah.
I feel very strongly about that.